Imagine this, one careless sentence tossed into a courtroom, delivered with the ease of someone who's never been told no, suddenly exposing years of quiet, invisible privilege. The municipal courtroom in Providence was already awake in its usual way, the faint scent of old varnish rising from the wooden benches, a soft buzz of morning chatter from people clutching envelopes, jackets rustling as they shifted for a better seat. A clerk flipped through files, each page giving off a crisp, dry whisper that floated through the room. Nothing unusual. Just a routine parade of parking violations. Then the door opened with a metallic click of the handle, and the atmosphere changed. She walked in like someone stepping into a place she didn't intend to stay. 27, impeccably dressed, her minimalist suit the kind you don't find on sale racks. Oversized sunglasses still on, though the lights were dim. A phone in her hand, thumb scrolling, barely glancing up as she approached the podium. You could feel the silence sharpen as people recognized her, not by fame, but by the unmistakable air of someone used to never waiting. She didn't sit. Didn't even tuck the phone away. A quick sigh, the kind meant to signal impatience to everyone within 10 feet. "Let's get this over with," she said. "You're lucky I even came." The words dropped like a weight. A couple sitting near the back exchanged a look. Someone near the aisle let out a small, disbelieving laugh. Even the clerk paused mid-page. Judge Caprio glanced up, his expression warm but firm, the kind of look that reads people before they speak. He opened the slim folder in front of him, and even that gesture had a certain gravity to it, as though he already sensed there was more here than 3 unpaid tickets. Her violation, on paper, was nothing dramatic, a trio of ignored parking notices downtown. But the numbers were strange. Lower fines than usual. Reduced penalties handwritten in margins. And a tiny stamp, repeat offender, yet no prior hearing. He looked at her again, at the phone, at the sunglasses, at the obvious expectation that this would take 30 seconds. "Miss," he said gently, "I'll need your name for the record." She didn't lift her head. "Can't you talk to my assistant? She handles everything." A wave of reaction rolled through the room, soft gasps, a few stunned chuckles, a scoff from the veteran in the second row. The kind of response that spreads when a single sentence reveals an entire worldview. Judge Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "In this courtroom," he said, tone steady as stone, "I speak to people. Not their assistants." For the first time, she froze. A tiny pause. Not fear, confusion, as if the script she relied on had been momentarily lost. And then Caprio turned back to the file, sliding out a document with a small frown. A detail caught his eye, something that didn't match the simplicity of her case. He tapped it once with his finger, then looked up with a thoughtful, almost searching expression. Whatever he saw in those papers, it was enough to make the entire room lean forward. That small thing had just cracked open. "Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe to this channel." Judge Caprio let the room settle before he spoke again. His voice came calm, almost gentle, yet carrying a weight that nudged people to listen. "Miss," he said, "help me understand something. You speak as if this place is beneath you. Is that how you see it?" A faint scoff escaped her, reflexive, not malicious, more like someone swatting away an inconvenient chore. "My life is complicated," she murmured. "I travel constantly. I don't handle tickets. People do that for me." She delivered it flatly, unaware of how it sounded to the people around her, the ones who took off work to be there, who paid fines from pensions and paychecks. Caprio didn't react outwardly, but he let the silence hang just long enough for her to feel it. He tried again. "Tell me a little about yourself." She hesitated, irritated but trapped by expectation. "There isn't much to tell. My family's in real estate. Big projects. My schedule is demanding." It came off as an attempt at indifference, but the slight crack in her voice suggested something else, exhaustion, maybe, or a loneliness she'd never admit. From the corner of the courtroom, an elderly woman leaned closer to her husband and whispered, "She's one of the Davenports, isn't she?" A soft murmur rippled through those who recognized the name. The Davenports had been in the news for years, not scandals, exactly, but controversies over developments that replaced old neighborhoods with glossy towers. Buildings that pushed out local shops, including some that families had run for generations. The young woman didn't hear the whispers, or pretended not to. She stood straighter, but the confidence looked hollow now. Caprio turned another page in her file. 14 citations in a single year. Every one of them paid by a corporate account. Not a signature of hers in sight. "You're aware," he said carefully, "that these notices were sent multiple times?" She shifted, folding her arms. "My assistant sorts all my mail. I don't see that stuff." A few people in the back exhaled sharply, not loud, but unmistakably judgmental. She continued, softer this time, as if the room had suddenly grown too attentive. "I grew up in boarding schools. My parents were always in meetings. My father solved problems with money, not conversations." She paused, eyes lowering just enough to reveal an emotion she hadn't planned on showing. "I guess I learned the same thing." It wasn't an excuse, but it was the first human thing she'd said. Caprio studied her, not with anger, but with the weary understanding of someone who had seen many versions of this story, people raised with everything except guidance. "And your mother?" he asked, gently. A long silence. Then, "We don't talk anymore." "Haven't in years." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Even those who disliked her felt a subtle pinch of sympathy. Caprio folded the file slowly, aligning its edges with deliberate care. "The fines are not what concern me," he said. "It's your belief that you don't have to answer for anything. That worries me." She blinked, not offended, but startled, as if no one had ever said such a thing to her directly. And for the first time since she walked in, she had no quick reply. The courtroom felt less like a public hearing and more like the moment before a storm reveals what truly lies beneath the clouds. The courtroom had fallen into that rare hush where even shifting in a seat felt intrusive. Caprio tapped a finger lightly on the edge of the file, then lifted his eyes toward the officer who issued the citations. "Officer Ruiz," he said quietly, "walk me through what you observed." Ruiz cleared his throat, glancing once at the young woman. "Your Honor, something in this file doesn't add up." The murmurs resumed instantly, like a tide returning after being held back too long. He pointed to the top sheet. "These tickets were written by officers from 3 different precincts. 2 of them don't even patrol her neighborhood. I don't know how her vehicle ended up flagged under their IDs." A ripple of confusion swept through the benches. Caprio pressed gently, "Clerical error." Ruiz shook his head. "Unlikely, sir. And, there's more." He turned another page. The penalties were repeatedly reduced. Every single time. Someone in the back let out a huff of disbelief. Another whispered, "If that were one of us." The young woman stiffened. "I told you, my assistant handles everything. I don't micromanage paperwork." It wasn't anger now, more like panic poorly disguised as irritation. Caprio let the statement settle before he asked, "Do you know where your car was parked on those dates?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "Not, specifically." That was when the atmosphere shifted. A hand rose slowly from the 3rd row. An elderly man, leaning heavily on a cane, stood with visible effort. His movements alone silenced the entire room. "Your Honor," he said, voice worn but steady, "those spots she kept taking, they were mine." The young woman's head jerked up. He continued, "I'm a disabled vet. I go to treatment twice a week. Every time I showed up, that space was taken. My space. I had to hobble across the lot or wait for someone to help me out of the car." A few people inhaled sharply. Someone whispered, "Lord have mercy." The woman's face drained of color. For a moment, she looked nothing like the polished heiress who'd breezed in earlier. She looked lost. Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Miss Davenport, he asked gently, did you know the space belonged to him? She shook her head, but it wasn't defiance now. It was the first honest reaction she'd shown since the hearing began. I had no idea. Ruiz added quietly, your plates were recorded there multiple times. We sent warnings. The reductions on the penalties, someone with authority had to intervene. The room tensed again. A few eyes narrowed, connecting dots she herself hadn't bothered to see. Caprio leaned back slightly, studying her. These documents show behavior. But behavior without understanding is only half the story. Her breathing grew shallow. For the first time, she wasn't defending anything, she was trying to process it. The veteran steadied himself on his cane. I don't want trouble, he said softly. I just want to park close enough to walk without feeling like I'm climbing a mountain. She blinked rapidly, struggling to speak. I never meant to hurt anyone. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't entitled. It was raw. And in the dense, electric stillness that followed, everyone sensed the same thing. This wasn't about fines anymore. It was about a life cushioned so thoroughly that she'd never once seen the weight she placed on the people beneath her. The moment marked a shift, the kind where a story stops being about rules and starts being about conscience. The room hadn't fully recovered from the veteran's quiet testimony when Caprio shifted in his chair. His voice remained gentle, but there was steel behind it now, the kind that says there's nowhere left to hide. Miss Davenport, he asked, did you understand that your repeated parking kept this gentleman from receiving medical care? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since she walked in, she didn't reach for her phone, her sunglasses, or her attitude. She looked, startled. Almost small. I didn't even know the car was being used at those times, she whispered. The reaction was instantaneous, a low, skeptical rumble from the benches. Someone muttered, sure she didn't. Another sighed heavily. But Caprio watched her closely, and something in her expression made him pause. You're saying someone else used your vehicle? A hesitant nod. My father. He borrows it constantly. Says it's faster to take mine because VIPs don't hunt for parking. The words slipped out before she realized what they exposed. The entire room leaned in, sensing a crack widening. The veteran blinked, brow tightening. Davenport, he repeated softly, tasting the name. His hand tightened on the cane. Is your father Richard Davenport? She nodded again, barely. A sound broke from the veteran that wasn't anger but recognition soaked in old bitterness. Your father made me testify against my neighbor when he wanted that land. Told me it was in the city's best interest. I never forgot that. The courtroom froze. Even Caprio's pen stilled midair. She stared at the floor, her breath shaky. Whatever shield she'd carried, money, status, practiced indifference, collapsed under the weight of someone else's memories. I didn't know, she murmured. He never told me any of that. The veteran softened, but only slightly. He didn't have to tell you. People like him never do. Her eyes lifted, and for the first time, they weren't glazed with entitlement but with something painfully human, the dawning realization that the world she grew up in had been carefully padded, curated, sanitized, while others paid the price. Caprio leaned forward, folding his hands. His tone was quiet enough that everyone had to stop breathing to hear it. Miss Davenport, he said, we're no longer talking about parking tickets. We're talking about accountability, the kind that goes beyond this courtroom. The words landed not as punishment, but as truth, the kind that draws a hard line between who you've been and who you must become. And as the silence settled, it was clear she had finally reached the threshold from which there was no going back. When the room settled again, Caprio lifted a thin bundle of printed reports the clerk had just brought over. He didn't hold them up like evidence meant to shame her, he handled them the way a doctor holds an X-ray when preparing to deliver a difficult truth. Miss Davenport, he said gently, I'd like to review a few details with you. The pages rustled softly as he passed the top sheet to the bailiff, who placed it before her. She hesitated before touching it, as though afraid of what it might confirm. These, Caprio continued, are the complete records of your parking citations for the past 5 years. Not 3 tickets. 34. A few gasps flickered across the room. One person muttered, 34, under their breath. And what's more interesting, he added, is that nearly all of them were reduced or erased before reaching the payment stage. Her brows knit. I didn't know. Caprio didn't argue. The system shows they were linked to a corporate account under Davenport Holdings. Each citation triggered an automated override. It wasn't corruption in the cinematic sense, no bribes, no envelopes. It was quieter, more insidious, privilege woven into the routine of a company so large it swallowed accountability whole. Before she could respond, the officer who first issued her ticket stepped forward. His voice was steady, but something thickened in it. There's something else, Your Honor. The day I cited her vehicle in the handicapped spot. I saw the veteran come out of the clinic. He couldn't find parking, and he missed his appointment window. He came back a week later for the same treatment. That delay didn't help him. A tremor ran through the benches, the kind that's half outrage, half grief. The veteran nodded, pressing his lips together. It's true. I had a bad spike that night. I managed, but it wasn't pleasant. The girl's breath hitched. She wasn't crying, but her chest rose and fell like someone fighting the truth she'd built her life not to see. I never meant, she began. Caprio stopped her with a raised hand. Not to silence her, to steady her. No one said you meant harm, he replied softly. But intention isn't the same as consequence. That landed harder than accusation could. He turned to the veteran. Sir, what would you want to say to her? The old man inhaled slowly, then exhaled through a thin, weary smile. I don't want her punished, he said. Punishment doesn't fix anything. I just want her to understand what it feels like when people think their time matters more than ours. She bowed her head, shoulders trembling with something that looked nothing like arrogance and everything like awakening. Caprio closed the folder. The sound was final, but not cruel. I believe, he said into the weighted stillness, that we now have the full picture. And for the first time since she walked in, she wasn't shielding herself with attitude or lineage. She was simply listening, really listening, as though hearing the world speak to her honestly for the first time. The room had quieted into that rare stillness found only when people sense a turning point. Caprio leaned back slightly, hands folded, studying the young woman not as a defendant but as someone standing at the edge of her own truth. Miss Davenport, he began, before I give my decision, I want you to understand something. Justice doesn't exist to crush people. It exists to guide them back to themselves. She lifted her eyes. For the first time, there was no shield in them, only a tentative, almost frightened openness. You grew up, he continued, in a world where problems vanished before you even saw them. But every problem that disappears without your effort takes a piece of you with it. So we're going to start giving those pieces back. A murmur of approval swept through the benches, subdued, respectful. He tapped the documents gently. I'm not imposing the maximum fine. That would only reinforce the idea that money solves everything. Another pause, longer this time, measured to let the weight of his words settle. Instead, I'm ordering 60 hours of volunteer service at Providence Community Medical Center. The same clinic where this gentleman receives treatment. You will assist staff, help patients navigate the building, and learn what time and access mean to those who depend on them. She didn't flinch. She inhaled slowly, as though bracing for something unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. I understand, she said quietly. Caprio nodded. Good. And one more thing, you will personally deliver a written apology to the clinic's emergency coordinator and to this veteran. Not for the tickets. For the inconvenience you never knew you caused. The veteran looked at her, not with triumph, but with something gentler, a kind of hope reserved for people who might yet surprise you. She turned toward him. "Sir, can I help you get to your appointment this week?" It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It felt like the first honest sentence she'd offered all morning. He gave her a small nod. "I'd appreciate that." Caprio placed the folder aside, signaling that the legal portion had ended, but the human one had only begun. "Miss," he said, softening his tone even further, "you're not defined by your father's influence. Or by these papers. You're defined by the choices you make when no one is clearing the path for you." Then, to the entire courtroom. Justice isn't punishment. It's a reminder that we owe something to each other simply because we share the world. The benches rose slowly, almost ceremonially. Not in applause, that wasn't allowed, but in a quiet gesture of respect. As the young woman stepped out of the courtroom, she didn't look taller or prouder. She looked lighter, as if the weight she carried wasn't the shame of being caught, but the relief of finally seeing her own reflection clearly. And for the first time since she walked in, she wasn't followed by her father's shadow. She walked out with her own footsteps.